Welcome to the Maximum Mom podcast today. And today I'm super excited to welcome Latrice Latin in joining me. Latrice, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, I'm super excited to talk to you. And I just have to tell everybody, if you all haven't looked at Latrice's new card, and I don't even know if it's new. I mean, I just saw it this weekend. She has, like I don't know, what would you call it? Is it an electronic card?
Yeah, I have an electronic card and I actually got them printed out. So I call them my little billboards. I walk around and pass them out.
I love it. It is really one of the most beautiful legal cards I've ever seen. And so really all of us should look at it. All of us should take a cue and try to be like Latrice because it's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thanks for joining. I mean, I just want to get out. Let's just talk about who makes you a mom. Let's just talk about that first, and then we'll go to all your experience and professional stuff.
Of course. So I have two kids biologically, my son, Joshua, who's 21, and then my daughter, Karina, who is 13. And I'm married. I got married last February. So now it's Latrice Latin Alexander, which gives me two bonus babies. So I have a 14-year-old daughter and another 9-year-old son. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So, you have your hands full, I would say.
I do.
I love that. Now, do the bonus kids live with you all some?
No, they stay in Maryland and Virginia. So they come down for like Christmas, holidays, summers, things like that.
Right. Perfect. That's awesome. And are the kids, do they get along pretty well?
They do. The girls, they're very similar in age. Right. So my daughter's 13, his daughter's 14, and they have their own rooms, but they literally spend the whole time together. So they go back and forth together in each room. It's kind of funny.
Love that. I love that. And you are a personal injury attorney in Atlanta, correct?
Yes. Personal injury and civil rights.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask about that civil rights part. Tell us a little bit about your practice area. I mean, what is your ideal client? How long have you been doing it? I would love to hear about your practice.
Okay, so for personal injury, I've been doing that for about 6 to 7 years now exclusively. Our ideal client is anyone in the Georgia area across the state who's gotten into a motor vehicle accident, a slip and fall, elevator accidents, any type of injuries, personal injuries. We do premises liability. We do kind of everything across the board. As far as the civil rights practice, we just started getting into that. I got some intensive training last year. So I've partnered up with another attorney and we're doing the civil rights cases together. And most of those are Fourth Amendment, 14th Amendment, basically police brutality cases, police deaths, abuses, taser cases, jail cases, things of that all over the US.
Wow, that has got to be fascinating work.
It is. It's heart-wrenching and fascinating at the same time.
Oh, yeah, I would think it would be just pretty horrendously heart-wrenching. When you say you got training in that, I mean, is there a particular thing you did to get involved in the civil rights? I mean, what kind of drove you to that?
Well, one of my mentors, Harry Daniels, who I work with, he's been doing it for a while. And I had started working with him when I did the personal injury, and he kind of switched over into the civil rights realm. And so we still do some cases together and work together. And he kept saying hey, you need to get into this. There's not enough people. There's a lot of cases. And I'm like, yeah, you hear the same 5 people all the time.
Yeah.
And, so finally, he kind of had a little retreat with a couple of attorneys, and he's like, hey, let me show you guys how these cases work, how we handle them, the law behind it. We went over actual cases that he had, the outcomes, and he taught us how to pretty much do the cases. And so since then, I've been okay, I'm on it. I can do it. We can do it. Yeah. And yeah, I'm really excited. I got my first really big case in Colorado. It's actually all over the news out there, and we're working on it right now.
That's amazing. Well, I saw you did a press conference out there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that. I mean, talk about an area of the law that needs more people who do know how to practice it.
Yeah, 1983 cases, it's mostly federal, which really works because I have a criminal and a civil background, but I started in federal bankruptcy litigation. So I have a lot of federal experience doing just cases in the bankruptcy court, 2004 exams, federal mortgage litigation. So I kind of can navigate through that space a lot. So this helped.
Oh, yeah. Well, and federal court definitely has its own, I mean, kind of beastly rules that a lot of attorneys don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely in its own kind of way. Well, tell us a little bit about, as I understand it, you are running a virtual practice, or at least did during the pandemic. What is that looking like now?
I did. And so we're kind of keeping that up. So right now, all of my staff is 100% virtual. I have a paralegal. She's here in Georgia, but she works from home. I have 2 receptionists who are actually in South Africa. They answer the phones every day. I have 2 other virtual paralegals. One does some legal assistant work with my PI paralegal, and the other one does all of my marketing. So she gets my videos together and my social media together and all those things.
And how are you liking running a virtual firm and, kind of like managing that team virtually?
I love it. I mean, it gives everybody the availability to be able to work from home, be there for the things that they need. Our platforms for our clients are also virtual. So we have a portal that they can log into, a messaging platform, and it just makes it a lot easier for communication and keeping up with everything, and not necessarily needing to go to a physical office every time that you need something. But if they do, I did get a physical office in July. Mostly for just purposes of having an address and somewhere if I wanted to meet clients to get checks, or if we have to have press conferences or things of that nature. But it's really worked out very well, and everyone loves it as far as I can tell.
That's awesome. Have you found any challenges in managing a virtual office? I as well manage a virtual office, and I feel like people often inquire about, what are the downsides of a virtual office? What have those been for you?
I don't think so, because I was really particular in the people that I hired and made sure that working from home was something that could work for them. I mean, we've had people who just couldn't do it, but with my processes, I'm really big on having processes, SOPs, KPIs. So everything, I don't micromanage, but since we have a good, robust system, I can see everything that my staff does every day. Everyone has their individual login. I can see what cases they, logged in on. Based on emails, I can tell if they're, getting with who they need to get with. I have a virtual phone system. We can record the calls. We can look and see who's coming in. So we have a lot of processes in place that kind of keep that going, to where I haven't seen a downside in it at all. I mean, and of course, the best thing is not having to get up and drive to work every day.
Absolutely.
Traffic.
Well, I mean, I think just getting that commute time back in your life, I mean, can for some people be the difference between being able to pursue a hobby versus not, or being able to, maybe go volunteer at your kid's school or not,
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, I think it's huge. I mean, I think being able to run a virtual practice has been pretty game changing for so many professionals. And I mean, there's so much controversy, though, I find out there in the world about some people being like, oh, it can't work at all, and other people being like, oh my gosh, I'm never going back. It's just like anything. I think, controversy kind of just gets stirred up. But I find it to be really impactful for people who are really trying to get that life work integration, more balance, where they're not feeling so off kilter.
Right. And if people with the work that we do, if it can be done from home and you can have a dedicated home office, I tell people all the time, if they're not going to work from home, how do you know if they're working at work? I think that we have this ideal that if somebody is sitting in an office for 8 hours a day, that they're doing something, when really they could be sitting there doing absolutely nothing. Just because they're there doesn't mean they're working, right?
I mean, yeah, that's just, to me, it's all a matter of who are you hiring? Kind of like, to your point, going through that process of hiring people, looking for certain people who take initiative, who are going to take personal responsibility, and who are going to respond to things like KPIs or measures of success, or, follow whatever systems you have in place.
Right.
have you worked with a coach, or, I mean, what have you done to kind of help you in your role as an entrepreneur and as a business owner? What does that look like for you?
I've tried a couple of coaching programs. I think it's kind of hard because I've been doing this for so long. I've been practicing for about 15 years now. So I feel like I've been around for so long. But Chris Guyman, I've worked with him. He's really good. And I still sit in on some of his coaching programs and help him and just participate. I love his platform because it's kind of like more of a think tank, where you have other attorneys and you guys work together and talk about what you're doing and what works and what doesn't work. I did try to do how to manage for a while. It just didn't work for me because I'm the type of person where I know what I have to do. It's just the point of making myself do it. And there's nobody who can like make me do something that I don't want to do at that minute, So it's like, I'm not going to pay you thousands of dollars to tell me to do something that I already know that I need.
Oh my gosh, completely.
It's like, that works for some people. They need somebody to call them, keep up with them, make sure. And that's not my style. Like, I'll get to it. So really, I just, for 2023, my big thing on staying intact, I bought an iPad and I started doing digital planning. So now I really sit out and I plan the things that I need to do. That's helped keep me on track. I bought my equipment to do my social media marketing and content and things of that nature. And so I'm really just being more mindful to myself. And of course, being able to make money once you realize like, oh, if I do this, I get a return. I need to keep doing this,
Oh my gosh, I love that. It's so true. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. We all really, I think, respond so differently to coaching. And I have had a myriad of different coaches as well, some more helpful than others. I have not ever done how to manage, but I have seen it. And anytime I look at any videos, there's too much yelling for me.
Yeah.
I'm like, I am not paying somebody to yell at me.
Right.
But I know so many people love it and they thrive under it, and they just, really attribute so much of their success to Arjan and how to manage. And so I think it just speaks really widely to how different people's learning styles are.
Yeah. And definitely in my space, when I've actually became a real businesswoman, right? Because before I used to practice law, it seemed like as a hobby, I wasn't running my business as a business. I have a really good accountant. I use Prestige Accounting, Jaden Doye. I love him. And it's like he coaches you, but it doesn't seem like coaching because really he just but he'll do my books. He'll get my accounting stuff together, but he's like, okay, so what are your goals? What are your plans? What are your KPIs? What are your this? And I'm like, quit asking me these things, but it really makes you look at what you need to do. And then for my marketing, I use the marketing boss and they handle my marketing, but it's kind of coaching there too, where we sit down and we collaboratively come together. And it's like, okay, these are the things that you need to do to succeed. What are you going to do? How are you going to put those in place? So I'm more of like a collaborator than having like one person telling me like, go do this and come back. Cause I'll be like, it didn't get done. I wasn't good at working. I wasn't good at the gym. That's why I don't have a trainer at the gym. Cause he's like, go do this. I'm like, I'm not doing that.
I mean, I think it is so important though, that you know yourself well, because I mean, I think a lot of people can sink some serious money into things that are not, they don't really speak to them, and they actually are not thriving under those systems. And then it's like, they think, oh, it doesn't work. And it's not that it necessarily doesn't work. It just might not work for you.
Right. Definitely don't fall into the pressure of other people. Do what works for you.
Oh my gosh. I would say that is one of the big things for me in 2023 is to stop any type of comparison at all about anything, anyhow, anyway. Like I'm so, and when somebody will ask me, well, why do you do this? If so-and-so, I'm like, why do I care what so-and-so is doing? Like, how is that relevant at all to what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, but really coming to a place where, I mean, it just doesn't matter, you know? I think that's pretty freeing to get to a place where you cannot, be focusing, because I find the comparison cycle, our brains can just go into a spiral of anxiety, worry, all kinds of things.
Like you said, everybody's different. What works for you may not work for me. I may get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. You may thrive at 11. You got to work with what works with your schedule in order to keep going.
Absolutely. I find that really true, though, in a virtual environment as well. That is one thing I love about a virtual environment is the flexibility for my team. So if I have a person who's a total night owl and they want to be drafting pleadings at 2 a.m, draft pleadings at 2 a.m, like if that's what makes you happy. You don't have to draft them at 9 a.m. And I think that virtual environment allows people to really work to their own personal strengths more.
Yeah, definitely. And it helps, like you said, that's why I love my team, because even though they're virtual, they're my team, they work when they want. I make sure somebody answers the phones. We make sure stuff is responded to. But if you want to get up, like you said, at 2 o'clock in the morning and respond to emails and send drafts, I have no problem waking up to a full email box,
Right. Me either. Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I mean, it makes me so happy when I have a team member and they'll reach out to me on Slack like late at night, and I know this is just their jam and what they do, and they've spent the day doing whatever. They might be helping with their kids, they could even be homeschooling their kids, and here they are checking in or whatever, and I'm like, good for you. Manage your life how you want, and I think it's a huge plus. I mean, we could talk forever about women and trying to do all the things that they're doing. And so I think the more we can do to help accommodate that, the better. Well, one thing that when I was, just kind of researching about you, learning about you, I heard you on a podcast, and you were really talking about fulfilling your destiny. And, it was really a powerful, I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? Like, kind of like, what are the challenges that you've encountered that have shaped who you are today?
Right. Well, one of the things is I had a very non-traditional legal career. So I had my son when I was in my junior year of college. And so, of course, when that happened, everyone's like, oh, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to go anywhere. And I'm like, watch this, So, of course, I had my son. I worked 2 jobs. I worked a full-time job, and then I worked a weekend job. And then I was going to school at night. And when I had him, I remember I was like, okay, so law school was my plan. No one in my family had been to law school, so I'm like, how do you get there? So I asked one of my professors, I was like, hey, I want to go to law school. Do you know how that works? Like, what are you supposed to do? How does that work? And he's like, well, you got to take the LSAT. And I'm like, okay, so where do you do that at? And he's like, you got to sign up and take this test and you got to apply. And I'm just like, kind of, okay, sure, why not? So I applied. The test was like within the month. It was very close, and I was just like, okay, well, I'm going to go take this test. I'm like, well, how do you study for it? And he's like, oh, I'll go to the library and get some books, just like I did the SAT,
Right.
And it was just kind of like, I'm going to do this. And I don't know how, but we're going to make it work. And I applied for law school. I got in at Mercer. And so then I looked at my mom like, okay, so what are we doing? Because I have this kid, I have this school. Are we taking him with me? Are we leaving him here? Luckily, my mother and grandmother kept my son. So I went to law school while he stayed up here. And when I graduated and I came back, and I'm like, okay, mom's back. And he's like, I'm not coming with you. He's like, I'm staying with Granny. She cooks. We go outside. That's it. And I'm like, okay. So the first couple of years I was working. And then finally, my grandmother, who was watching him, decided to go back to California. And so it was a real transition to get my kid to understand, because I think he was like 1 or 2 when I was in law school. So finally I come back, he's like around 5 and I'm like, come on, let's go. And he's like, And I'm like, come on, go with mom. And he's like, no. So finally when my grandmother left, he came begrudgingly, but it was a real transition to be able to go from a full-time student to a full-time working mom, and I was a single mother. So my mom and my sister still kind of helped in the meantime, and we kind of made it work. And finally he came with me, and about, let's see, he was 5, so I had my daughter 9 years later. And so I waited a long time. I was like, on the kids. And by the time I had her, I was working, and I was a single mother with 2 kids working full time. And so I was like, well, maybe I need to start my own thing, or I don't know. And so I was doing bankruptcy work at the time, and I had ended up having like a really hard time at that job. So I remember I got my stuff and I packed everything in the box, and I was like, you know what, I'll leave. We're not going to have to worry about, I'll just go. And so I was sitting outside of the building with this box, and I was like, what the heck am I going to do now? And it was just kind of like, okay, you have 2 kids, no job, and you got to figure it out. And it was so funny because these 2 guys, I always laugh. I'm like, I don't know if they were homeless men on the side of the street. They came up to me and they were like, what just happened? And I was like, I don't really know, but I don't have a job anymore, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And they like prayed for me, and they were just like, you're going to make it. You're going to be good. Don't worry about it. God's got you. And I was just like, okay, so I took my last paycheck and I was like, time to start a law firm. So this is like 2010. And I started my firm. I did some bankruptcy stuff. I did some mortgage litigation, and I had got into PI from one of my paralegals, who was like, hey, do you know anything about PI? And I'm like, no. And he's like, I think it's pretty cool. You should try it. And he's like, and I have this paralegal who does it, and she can come in and work with us. And I was just like, okay, And so she came, and we had her daughter's case, and we had some other cases. And I was like, I kind of like this a little bit, And so I would go back and forth. Like I'd work, I'd run my firm, and I'd be like, oh my God, I can't do this. Let me go get a job. So then I'd go get a job, and I'd be like, oh my God, I can't go work for anybody. Then I'd come back, and it was just like this cycle, right? For years. And so finally in 2020, when the pandemic hit, I was working at a job, a PI job. I quit the job to go to another job. And then 5 days later, the guy fires me. And then it's the pandemic. And I was like, okay, Lord, it's me. What are we doing? And one of my girlfriends, she was like, look, you need to stop it. She's like, figure out what you're going to do and stick to it. If you're going to run your firm, quit running back and forth and do what you got to do. And I was like, yes, ma'am. And so during that time, I got an SBA loan. I got with a couple of paralegals, and I was like, I'm doing this. Like, I'm just going to do it. And I said, I needed to learn to run my business as a business. And ever since then, it's been going extremely well. So it was a crazy way to get here.
That is awesome, though. I love that. Oh my gosh. I mean, I can only picture you outside your building with your box talking to these guys. I mean, sometimes the real deep humanity of other people. I mean, here were people actually reaching out to help you at such a time of need.
Right. Those prayers were greatly appreciated, because I had no idea what's going to happen here, how these kids are going to eat.
Right.
We'll figure it out,
Well, and I just love, though, when you listen to your story, like even when you're saying like, I got hired and then fired 5 days later. I mean, you're literally like, you didn't go into blame anybody else. Like you're very much a person who kind of owns your situation, good, bad, and ugly.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I mean, it's pretty empowering, I think, to kind of look in the mirror and see yourself and the person who does control your own destiny.
Right. Because if you leave it up to other people, I mean, I'd be a drunk somewhere, it's like, you gotta just keep, and just having like good friends and family who speak life into you and who support you and help you and let you realize, like you can do this. Cause there's always that thing in your head, like I'm a mom, but I'm a businesswoman, but these kids gotta eat, but I need to figure out how they're going to eat, because there's nobody but me. And I tell people all the time, like, I'm lucky now I'm a mom and a wife, so I have this ability of having a husband to help with everything. But for a very long time, it was just me and these babies trying to figure out what the next step.
Yeah. Well, I would assume that in the course of all this, I mean, you have really had some real struggles with finding that kind of balance between your life, your kids, your work. How have you dealt with that? I mean, have you ever felt like really off balance?
I did for a while, before the pandemic hit. That was like a very mind-blowing experience for me because I was moving so much that I didn't know what it was like to just be still. And so to finally like not happen to have to do anything, that was like the best moment of my life. I was just like, wow, I can just sit here and breathe and think and spend time with my kids and cook dinner and have dinner together. And it's like every minute you don't have this practice or this place or this game or this, that. And my kids, they were finally like, Mom, this is the first time we've actually got to spend time with you and hang out and, be together as a family. And I'm like, wow, like this has been going on for 19 years. And this is the first time that we've really, and they're just like, you used to go to work, come home, make sure food was done and pass out because I'd be tired,
Yeah.
And then on the weekends, if it wasn't a basketball game or a ballet practice or a birthday party or, running errands, there was just never any time to really like be in the moment of being a mom. It was more like you were on this schedule trying to make sure that everything was done as opposed to just sitting back and spending time with the kids.
Oh, I completely agree. I mean, I think during the shutdowns, I mean, it was wildly eye-opening to see how busy we had let ourselves become up until that point. And yeah, just totally agree. I mean, it's been hard. I mean, for me, like my children are older. So, I mean, we actually became empty nesters during the pandemic, like the youngest went off. But it's been hard to want to get back to a lot of that busyness of, going out to eat or doing this or showing up at conference after conference after conference. Like, I'm like, could I just do that on Zoom, please? I really don't want to, do all this. I mean, we've been really purposeful as a couple, like keeping our travel down. We historically traveled a ton with my husband's work. And now post-pandemic, we really are finding that we don't necessarily want to travel as much.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, it's been, I think, a lot of self-reflection.
Definitely getting into a more laid back vibe. That's why I thought with the virtual firm, it makes it to where I can make my own way. I still have the hours that are traditional, but I can work and do the things that I need to do. And if I get too tired and I need to take a nap during the day, or if I'm not feeling well or something, I can do that. And everything is not going to shut down.
Right, exactly. And I mean, you work likely many other hours around, where you taking a nap one day is just not going to be impactful, except to your mental health and your, self-care.
Right.
Honestly. What are some of the things that you do when you think about like small and big steps to prioritize, self-care and your mental health? What are some of those things that you do to do that?
I love to read books.
Yeah.
So I know last year I read over 50 books and I've already started this year. I can read a book a day. So I just read 2 books. I read one Friday, one Saturday, because I'm in book clubs. So I love that. I like to zone out. Like I'm not a big TV person, but I love to watch movies or I love to cook. So I have like my HelloFresh and I'll do my little, recipes of that nature. I always make sure that I go get my hair done and my nails done. And I need to get some massages, but I haven't done that yet. I'm going to put that on my list. And I want to start taking a Pilates class because I have to throw some fitness in there. But mostly just reading and relaxing and taking time. Like I know if I get too overwhelmed, I kind of have to set myself down and be like, hey, you need to stop. Because if I get too stressed out, I'm one of those people where stress manifests physically.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen, even this past year in July, I had gotten really sick. I got viral meningitis and I was in the hospital for like 16 days. And I was just like, okay, so if I don't sit down, God will be like, here you go. You know, like you can't do anything. You can't go anywhere. You're just going to be stuck. And I was just like, this is torture, you know?
Ow. Oh my gosh, you must have been so ill.
Yeah. I had to
Wow.
sit there and it was crazy because I'm always on go and I started again, you know, like this. And I just got this headache. And then I got this really bad headache. And then I got this like excruciating, I can't even think straight. My head was hurting so bad. And I just looked at my husband and I'm like, I need to go to the hospital. And he's like, okay. And we go and we're sitting there. And they're like, what is it? I'm like, it's not COVID. Well, is it? It's not the flu. It's not this. And the doctor's like, well, let's do a spinal tap. And so we're sitting there like, spinal tap? That seems a little excessive. And so she does it and she's like, oh yeah, it's viral meningitis. And then they give me some fentanyl. And the next thing you know, I'm like knocked out.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Isn't that fascinating though, how stress really can manifest itself, you know, in your body in negative ways? I mean,
It can kill you. They say it all the time, but you're like, no. And you see all these people having heart attacks and,
oh, yeah.
you know, it's just like people don't understand overly stressing yourself out can really affect you in your life. So I try to make sure that I stay as stress-free as possible, which doesn't help. I'm not gonna say stress-free, I say less stress, you know?
Right.
And it's a good thing to use on like my kids and my husband, like, you guys know I was in the hospital, you know, don't stress me out.
I mean, I definitely think taking care of yourself has to be like really one of your number one priorities, you know? I mean, and I know we moms a lot of times, you know, put ourselves kind of at the bottom of our list, you know? And I think a lot of us pay for that, you know, as the years go by.
Definitely. We think it's like, oh, if we're doing something, well, I could be using that time to do this, or I could be helping this or doing this. And sometimes I just like to sit here and do nothing. Like my do nothing days are my absolute favorite days. Like I'll look on my calendar and I'm like, when do I have absolutely nothing planned? And I'll just lay down and just veg out, you know, like everybody
Yeah.
leave me alone. You know?
Yeah. I mean, a do nothing day sounds utterly glorious.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, sounds amazing. Well,
Mhm.
I really, really appreciate your time today in joining us. And I really cannot wait to watch you and do all the work you're doing, especially with the civil rights work. I mean, I think to be a woman in that space is pretty powerful as well. I mean, yeah, I would think it's going to be really interesting as you evolve that. And I love that you have a mentor who's, you know, really been working and kind of like, I mean, partnering with you, like side by side to help you. I mean, that is such a real blessing. Now, one thing I did want to mention, and we haven't touched on it, I mean, you are the co-founder of the For Black Girls Inc., right?
Yep.
Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, talking about mentoring.
Yes, so that's our mentor program that I have with 3 other law school friends of mine. And basically we've been doing it for about 5 or 6 years now. And we basically just mentor girls. We teach them etiquette, we teach them about their bodies, we teach them how to enroll in college, how to take care of themselves, how to cook, how to clean, anything you could think of personally, professionally. With these young girls, we take them to museums and musicals and just spending time giving back, loving on them, having professional role models for them to be able to look up to and kind of see how we did it and ask us questions. And just opening the floor for them to feel good about talking about whatever's on their minds, you know, because sometimes you can talk to your moms and sometimes you kind of can't. So we give them that kind of safe space to be able to really just discuss life and help move them forward in life. We've kind of slowed down this year because everybody has been so busy, but we're moving towards building our platform. So like a new website, more interactive, and then our scheduling and stuff like that.
That's amazing. What an amazing program. I mean, kudos to you all. I mean, I was just thinking about you having that conversation with your professor, like, how do I go to law school?
Mhm.
Sounds like this is the kind of thing, like you could answer a lot of those questions.
Or if they want to be doctors, we have a
Right.
lot of doctors that we come and speak to them. Or, hey, I want to be a librarian. Well, let's find a library, just being
Yeah.
able to connect kids to resources that they otherwise may not have, and being able to see how that works is a really, really good thing.
It's so powerful. I mean, I just think mentoring is probably one of the most powerful things we can do in this world to really help younger people and make those connections. Because I mean, so many times I don't think younger people realize how important those connections are, and just learning about building a network and understanding more about different jobs. I mean, I have joked for my whole life. I went to college and my parents literally made me think I could be a lawyer, a doctor, or an engineer. They failed to mention that there were 2 million other jobs out there.
Mine too.
I don't know, like, what were you two thinking?
It's like doctor or lawyer, and it's like, I don't like blood, so I guess I'll go for lawyer. And now every day I'm like, why didn't anybody tell me about this influencer job on YouTube? Like, literally, I could be making millions just chronicling my life. Nobody told me this.
Oh my gosh, definitely. I definitely missed out on a whole slew of job opportunities. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, well, I just think that's an amazing program. Well, again, thank you so much for joining. And for anyone who wants to subscribe to the podcast, I mean, you can do that at any place, you listen to podcasts. And again, thank you so much. Now, Latrice, how can people reach you?
Okay, so they can reach me on Facebook, IG, or TikTok under ATLPI Attorney. Those are the easiest ways. My office, you can call 678-890-5868. It's the Latin Law Group. Or you can email me at llatin@atlpiattorney.com.
Perfect. Well, we will make sure to get all that in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely.